Hi, everybody. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Chris Magpayo, and I'm a Vice President at Mastercard in our Enterprise Partnerships Group. In this role, I'm focused on working with partners to help them transform the supply chain. And obviously, from a Mastercard perspective, we want to bring and obviously help digitize the space and bring payments to it. But if I could even break it down further, if you look at what our core business does today, we can simplify it in two steps. You have a message and a settlement. The first step is the message which Mastercard facilitates between two banks to say that the transaction is good. And that second step is the settlement, the movement of money afterward. And so with that first step, the message, that idea of validation and authentication, if you take that model, we obviously see that we can apply that, here within the supply chain. Now, I won't bore everyone, but we know that certain things, or sometimes all things, need to be recorded at a certain point in time. And you need to be able to trust the entity that is telling you the action took place. And so that's the role that Mastercard will play within the supply chain and how I work with partners today. We're not the tech point provider, but we're a point of validation. And so in moderating today's discussion, I'm excited to share with you what we're doing in the space with our partner Aeon. And together we'll speak to the challenges we're seeing. We'll talk to the complexity of the supply chain, the X factors that impact and create inefficiencies, but then we'll speak to solutioning and how we think we can solve for them with the bundling of our solutions, and of course with other parties to help along the vaccine supply chains today, and how that work extends even further, laying the groundwork for the supply chain of other critical goods, and potentially changing the way trade supply chains are managed going forward. And so with that said, I have the pleasure of introducing my panel of one, Paul Kim, Head of Strategy and Product Development at Aeon.
Thank you very much, Chris. And I am pleased to be here today to present with you, Chris, on this, what I believe to be a very, very important topic in terms of improvements in the supply chain. Just briefly regarding Aeon, Aeon is a global corporation with over 50,000 employees that focuses on risk, retirement, and health. Our purpose and proposition is to shape decisions for the better, so to protect and enrich the lives of people around the world. Aeon is in the business of better decisions. As you mentioned, I am responsible for strategy and product development for Aeon's global commercial risk business, a role that I've had for about 2 years now.
Well, thanks, Paul. So when I think about what we want to chat about today, talking about vaccine supply chains and the lessons for the future, we probably want to start around talking about how the supply chain complexity is expanding, right? We have these supply chains that are complex ecosystems across multiple domains, scales, and borders, from raw materials, processing, and manufacturing to finished goods. Supply chains encompass many domains. You have small family endeavors to enterprise scale operations. Contributors and the participants in a supply chain are diverse with limited but comprehensive resources. And they basically spring out to multiple modalities operated by diverse organizations to deliver all these goods around the world. And then you factor in the politics and economics of countries that can have an enormous impact on custody transfer and costs. And so basically all these factors, they create challenges that lead to uncertainties in supply chains. Would you agree, Paul?
Oh, absolutely, Chris. And not a day goes by when you don't hear another story about challenges in the supply chain. And if you look at the beginning of the pandemic, with pretty much ceasing of commercial airline flights and the challenges many producers and manufacturers had in getting goods from one point, from the point of origin to the point of destination, you saw that the transportation and logistics professionals around the globe struggled with getting their goods to the appropriate spot at the appropriate time. And so we have been working on looking to try to improve the supply chain using sensor technology for the past several years. And that is one of the key projects that Aeon and Mastercard, along with other companies, have been working on. And so we're excited about that. And Chris, when we saw the creation of the COVID-19 vaccines, as members of the global population, we were excited because we thought that was going to be the beginning to the end of the pandemic. And then we recognized that the need for some of these vaccines needed to be maintained at ultra cold storage temperatures. We thought about all the work that we had done in looking at sensor technology in the supply chain and said, wow, what a wonderful use case for our collective companies and others to see how we could improve, enhance the global distribution of the COVID-19 vaccines, plus make sure that you gave comfort and confidence to individuals, to health systems around the world, that the vaccines that they're receiving were maintained at the appropriate conditions, primarily temperature, that the manufacturer and the health departments in those various jurisdictions required, right? And so we endeavored to work with a consortium of companies to try to develop a specific insurance solution that we call track and trace that provided insurance coverage for the global distribution of the COVID-19 vaccines.
Or maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on how quickly the project came together to want to support the vaccine supply chain.
Sure. So, Chris, we started our efforts in the fourth quarter of 2020 as we heard about the global rollout of the COVID-19 vaccines. We approached insurance companies at that time to see if they would write a unique marine cargo insurance solution specifically for the distribution of those vaccines, with special features that if approved sensor technology was utilized in those deliveries, that based upon the output of those sensors for any temperature excursion, the insurers would rapidly respond to that loss and pay the insured entity, whether it was a health system, whether it was a government, whether it was the manufacturer, a very timely payment. Because what we wanted to do was to support the global health efforts to make sure that the vaccines were distributed as quickly as possible so that they can get into the arms of individuals as quickly as possible.
When you talked about the sensor technology, obviously, if data is not available, logistics activities are invisible, until the goods reach, in this case, vaccines reach the next person in the chain. The state of the goods aren't known. Can you speak a little bit more to the combination of technologies and capabilities that made this possible?
Oh, absolutely. So firstly, when we did approach the insurers and we developed a consortium of insurers that were all very excited to not only look at the commercial opportunity broadly of sensor technology in the supply chain, but to do something good, right? Hey, if we could try to insure these shipments at a very reasonable cost level for the distributors, for the health systems, for the governments, we felt that we were going to be doing something good for society at large. And it was not difficult to get these consortium of insurers to agree to support this state-of-the-art insurance solution. In addition, we also had approached other companies who could assist with either providing sensor technology, providing visualization tools, providing blockchain solutions that assisted with the provenance issue to make sure that these were legitimate vaccines manufactured by the companies that were authorized by the WHO or in the United States, the CDC. And so there were many companies that we approached who are absolutely willing to support this effort with complementary services or products. We felt good about that as, again, members of the world and human society, that we had companies that were willing to look beyond commercial issues and support what we believe to be a very important endeavor. Now, again, I think this was critical in and of itself, Chris, but it was also what we believe to be the first step in the journey of improving the supply chain overall by the implementation and utilization of IoT sensors, or even at a minimum data loggers that register the condition of these shipments as they move around the world.
That's great. That ability to, help kind of get data out of these silos, record them to an immutable ledger, but more importantly, as you kind of talked about, leveraging the leveraging IoT technology to capture all of that important data. And then, as you said, working with the right partners, and then having those partners upload those data onto immutable ledgers, obviously help contribute to your solution, which helps to make this possible. If you don't mind my asking, what can be taken from this initiative to advance and drive other implementations?
Well, certainly we looked at the pharmaceutical industry and specifically the temperature requirements of certain COVID-19 vaccines that had to be kept at very low temperatures. But the lessons learned, we think, are applicable to other industries as well, broadly pharmaceutical products, capital goods, high value goods, and perishables as well, where condition monitoring is important. And Chris, let me give you a couple of use cases where we think the utilization of real-time sensors and visualization tools would improve. So if you had a shipment going from a manufacturing site to the airport to be put on a plane, if there was a sensor on that shipment for that journey, and if the sensor registered an excursion of the conditions, temperature, humidity, shock, tilt, and based upon the output of that real-time connected sensor, it was determined that that shipment was damaged, then the manufacturer producer wouldn't have to put it on the plane, wouldn't have to incur the air freight cost of having that shipment be sent from the airport of origin to the airport of destination, right? Without a sensor, it would have gone on that journey, and when it arrived at the destination, then and only then would somebody have realized that the goods were damaged. But if there was that sensor, they would have realized before it was loaded on the plane, and remediation efforts could have been made where another shipment could have been put on another truck, could have been put on the next flight out, so that the end customer received those goods in time, as opposed to several days or a week later. So that's one use case. Another use case is if you think about a shipment of perishable goods on a truck. If you have a real-time connected sensor, and all of a sudden the temperature drops or rises, an alert could be made where a message could be sent to the truck driver to say, hey, wait, the refrigeration on your truck isn't working. Please pull over and go to the service center and see what can happen. Now, maybe the air conditioning unit can be fixed, maybe it cannot be, but you just think about the power of that data and the power of that information to remediate a loss before it ever occurs. And that's why Aeon is involved in this project, because we believe using sensor technology will improve the way that marine cargo insurance is written in the future.
You kind of answered a little bit of this, but obviously as we move through the last months of 2021 and look to the year ahead, is there anything more you want to touch upon in terms of the sectors or use cases that we want to prioritize with these capabilities?
Yeah. Well, specifically looking at some of the challenges with cargo insurance claims, if the goods are damaged throughout a journey, and let's say it was land and sea and then land again, a lot of times you do not know when the damage occurred. You just know that the goods were damaged at the destination. And if you had a sensor technology, you would be able to determine at exactly what time, what location, the damage that occurred. So for example, Chris, if a company transfers goods through an airport in Europe, and the goods keep on getting damaged, by using the sensor technology, you can identify, wait a second, it seems to always occur at the just airport where the goods are transferred from one location to the, from one airplane to the other. And you can look at that situation and say, clearly there's something happens on the handling of those goods at that transfer point. And the company can hone in and try to remediate those issues. Maybe it's not being handled properly. Maybe they're leaving it out on a tarmac in 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Or if the company decides that that doesn't make sense for them, and the expenses of those losses are significant, they can decide to alter their transportation route and transfer the goods through a different airport. And so again, the value of that knowledge, that value of that information is critical, and we believe in the long term will improve the cost proposition for these companies.
For those that are listening who feel they have complementary capabilities or believe they have a use case for this technology, how can they get involved and get in touch?
Yeah. So, we are very excited about this. We think Aeon is looking at supply chain very broadly, and this is one of the projects that we are focused on in looking at the global supply chain and how we can help companies make better decisions. But specifically on this project, what we are trying to do is have companies look at visualization tools. So first of all, they just know where their goods are in the world. Most sensors are real-time and connected, and so they can see the location of their goods, whether it's at a pallet level or a container level on a real-time basis. Obviously, sea journeys, you just know that it's in a container on the bottom of a ship without necessarily knowing where the ship is. But I understand that there are tools where you can get the location of the ship as well, and you can track that location during the journey of the transportation of those goods as well. And so we are excited to work with companies on proof of concepts so that they can come to us and say, hey, look, we have one route that we want to look at where we think that there has been some issues or where we would like to get better visibility. And Aeon, along with Mastercard and a few of our other partner companies, are excited to work with those companies on these proof of concepts.
So I guess to close or to summarize, and Paul, thank you again for your time in kind of sharing out the solution and what Aeon partnered with Mastercard and several of these other parties have to offer. We're really excited about the opportunity to participate with you as you provide this innovative industry collaboration to, help protect not just COVID-19 vaccine shipments, but also as we take this solution of providing additional layer of tracking and traceability that's recorded to an immutable ledger and then obviously leveraged by Aeon and your partners, for the benefit of your customers, not just in the pharmaceutical space, but into other areas like capital goods, luxury goods, perishables. Really excited about, where the space can go and where it can take us, and potentially help provide value across the value chain. In terms of additional information or any other closing points that you want to share out, Paul?
Yes, Chris, actually two other points, right? I think we talked about the provenance issue, but I think it's really important to emphasize that issue as companies around the world and as activists out there look to make sure that the companies understand where their goods are coming from. The provenance issue, we believe, is also very critical. And so if by using sensor technology, you can demonstrate that those goods came from those sources, those suppliers, and was maintained throughout the entire journey, you have a lot more confidence in your supply chain and understanding where all the raw materials, the ingredients, whatever they may be, the country of origin, the manufacturer, the farm, the field, etc. And we think that that is very important. We have a vision of how this project will improve the supply chain. As we discussed, Chris, the first step was looking at the global distribution of the COVID-19 vaccine. But per our conversation, this goes above and beyond that vaccine. It goes above and beyond pharmaceutical products to many other products out there. We also have a vision of how this sensor technology, the immutable block ledger, can assist with the facilitation and the speed of transportation through the global supply chain. So while we're excited about the next year, the next 2 years, we're also really excited about the next 5 to 10 years as well, and how this technology can really enhance the global distribution of goods.
That's great, Paul. Thank you. Again, really appreciate your time and today and kind of sharing out and speaking with me about our solution and what Aeon is doing.
Great. Thank you very much.